Hello, hello, hello! Isn't he cute? I got this in Disney World, Japan. Other countries just seem like a foreign concept right now, which I guess they are a foreign concept, but hi, I'm Taylor Smurl, and this is Neat. Now, over on the podcast this week, we talked all about Amaretto. Now, just a review, Amaretto is a liqueur from Saronno, Italy. Came about the end of the 1800s, early 1900s. It is associated with the flavor of almonds. However, a lot of the big brands don't use almonds at all in their process. They actually use apricot pits, peach pits, cherry pits. The flavor of that bitter almond extract that we associate with Amaretto is found in the pits of stone fruit. We get into on the podcast some of the cool science as to why almond flavor exists inside of the pits of stone fruit. The long story short of it is they share a chemical compound called amygdalene, which gives us the distinctive flavor, and interestingly enough, breaks down in our system in cyanide. So, if you want to have more sexy cyanide info, check out the podcast. I'm not gonna go into that here. You gotta listen sometimes, alright? We put effort into it. This is just for funsies and drinksies. Speaking of which, I'm gonna be making two cocktails today with Amaretto, based on two of the best known, not necessarily best cocktails that are out there made with Amaretto. So first we're gonna be doing a little play off the Amaretto Sour, and then after that we're gonna do a play on the Godfather. So first up, the problem of course with the Amaretto Sour is that it is very sweet. It is just traditionally Amaretto sour mix. So what we're going to do is we're gonna add back in some bitterness. We're gonna bring in some acidity. I thought it would be fun to bring the actual stone fruit back into the picture, and I think it's gonna relate really nicely. I'm a big proponent of what grows together goes together, so I think having the liqueur that's made with the flavor of the stone fruit pits, in Lazzaroni's case apricot, and then bringing in some actual apricot flavoring, I think is gonna work really well. So the Lazzaroni Amaretto specifically, I like to always give a little rundown of the bottle. It says it's flavored with biscotti amaretti, and that's basically what they say they do. They bake their amaretti biscuits and then they infuse that into a molasses-based spirit. So I guess you're like the cookie butter of the booze world. So for this sour play, I'm gonna add a lot of sweet to this drink, but I want to have a little bit of an earthy spice to help balance out all of our sweet fruity notes, and I'm gonna do that with a little bit of fresh cracked black pepper. So I'm just putting about like 10 black pepper kernels in my shaker, and I'm gonna just break them down with my muddler, because I don't want like heat in this drink. The thing that I like about black pepper, green pepper, white pepper, they all have this in common. They tend to build up on the back of your palate. So especially if I've had a drink that's gonna play sweet up front, it's gonna kind of control that finish and sort of cut it short. Now, I'm going to bring back the apricot to this drink via apricot preserves. I love working with jam. I've done it a lot on this show. To me, it's great because seasonal fruits, I feel like stone fruits, especially peaches, apricots, plums, they can be really finicky depending on the season, but jam is pretty evergreen. Also, I think that already released pectin that you get access to in your drink when you mix with it adds a really lovely velvety texture to a cocktail. When we're getting our sweetness from something like triple sec, or in this case Amaretto, which I'm gonna use obviously, they're a little thinner and they don't quite give that nice texture that we want. So jam is a great way to bring texture to a drink. All right, I'm just gonna use about a bar spoon. Now my other sweet ingredient, obviously, I'm gonna bring in some Amaretto. I'm gonna do a ½ ounce of that. And then of course, I'm gonna bring in some citrus. I've got an ounce of lemon juice here. And then as a base spirit, I'm gonna mix it up with some bourbon. I will say, when I was first brainstorming this drink, I tried it first with gin, and it actually worked really nicely. I think the bourbon brings some warmth to it that it really needs, but if you're not a bourbon fan, if you're a vodka drinker or a gin drinker, I think you could try this same format and you would get a pretty good result. Oh, and should have been my first step, but oops. Some Angostura bitters. Hey, Dad? Hey, I'm shooting the Amaretto video right now. Can I call you back? That's okay, I love you. Here, bye. All right, now of course, because I've got that black peppercorn in there, I'm going to double strain this drink. So I got my fine strainer, tea strainer, sometimes it's called. And I'm just gonna be real simple with the garnish. I'm gonna garnish it with a lemon wedge. I think you could actually, there's a small amount of cocktails that historically are garnished with the cookie. I think if you had some Amaretto di Serona, the little Amaretto cookies on hand, you could probably make a real cute as heck garnish right with that, but I don't have no cookies, so I've got a lemon. Oh, that's nice. That marriage between the apricot and the Amaretto just makes so much sense. They complement each other so nicely. That bourbon gives us that nice roasty, slightly savory corn undertone, and that pepper is gonna just build up on my palate. It's gonna keep serving its purpose of cutting off the sweetness and making me wanna go back for more. Hey, guess what I did this week? I thought about the names for the drinks before I sat down in front of the camera. Who even am I? Who even am I? I love it. I would never make a drink on this show that I wouldn't feel confident you could make at home and would have a good chance of liking it. It's rare that I make a drink on the show where I go, damn, I wish I was making a menu right now for a bar because this deserves to be on a menu. And I actually feel that way about this drink. But of course, if it was on a menu, it needed a name. We told the two origin stories, the two conflicting origin stories of the two companies that claim to have created Amaretto. The Di Serrano story is this lovely romantic tale of a young painter who became enamored with the woman he was using as a model while he was painting these frescoes of the Virgin Mary in a church in Serrano. And thanks for using her as a model, the young woman made the painter an Amaretto liqueur, and I guess that's one way to say I love you. Here's some booze. Thank you for the lovin'. I hope he paid her in some way, but So of course, when you talk about the Virgin Mary, that's one of the prominent Marys in the Bible. The other one, of course, is Mary Magdalene. Amygdalin, the chemical that causes the bitter sweet quality that we associate with almonds and in the stone fruit pits, shares a translation with Magdalene in Italian, in that they both come back to the word bitter. How about we just name this drink after the other Mary in the Bible, and we'll call this the Mary Magdalene. That's the extent of my knowledge on the Bible. I know a lot about Revelations, but that's because I was raised Catholic and we just hear all about the end times. So cheers to you, to the other Mary. For our next drink, we are going to tackle a revision of the Godfather Cocktail. The classic Godfather Cocktail, of course, is an ounce of Amaretto to 2 ounces of scotch, presumably blended scotch. It'd be really sad if you were putting that much Amaretto in like nice single malt scotch. It's not actually a bad drink. Like, I don't have the same feelings about it that I have for the Amaretto sour, but it's not necessarily a better way of drinking scotch. So we're gonna take that concept and sort of apply that same idea that I used for the sour. We're gonna bring back in some of those flavors of the stone fruits that possess that amygdalin compound in their seeds. In this case, I'm going to use cherry as my sort of build around. Over on the podcast, I mentioned that you could play around with the amount of Amaretto to scotch and make it sort of like an old fashioned, and that was my initial concept for this drink. However, the more I thought about it, thinking about cherries, I'm like, well, I'm gonna have a base spirit with like a cherry flavor. I think of a Manhattan, you know, and a Scotch Manhattan is a Rob Roy. That's a delicious drink. So why don't I kind of go in a Manhattan-y direction with this drink? And that's what I did. So a couple things. I'm gonna build my Manhattan in the glass. Usually Manhattans are served up, but in this case, because we do have a little bit more sweetness going on in the drink, I think having a drink as cold as possible is always a good way to ensure it won't get too cloying if it comes up to room temperature. So I'm gonna start with a couple dashes of my tried and true Angostura bitters. Now I'm gonna do something next that I have definitely made fun of in the past, but heck, it works for this drink. I've got some homemade brandied cherries here. These are just cherries that I soaked in an equal amount of brown sugar syrup and brandy. So I'm gonna use 2 cherries, and I'm actually gonna muddle them slightly into my drink. I've definitely made fun of muddling fruit in old-fashioned applications before. This is not an old-fashioned, but still. It's a stirred drink, and I'm muddling fruit in it. I don't know who I am anymore. Quarantine has changed all of us. Next thing you know, I'm gonna be making a Tucci Negroni, just shaking the shit out of it and being like, it's not so bad. It actually isn't so bad. So I got my bitters, I got my muddled fruit. I'm going to do a 1/4 ounce of my Amaretto and a 1/4 ounce of sweet vermouth. So I'm gonna do a bit of a split base, sort of an uneven split base. I'm gonna do 1.5 ounces of rye, using my dad's hat from last week. Shout out to Dad's hat. And I'm gonna do a 1/2 ounce of Lefroy, my super peaty single malt scotch. I first tried this drink with a blended scotch. I had some Johnny Walker on hand, and it was just a little flabby. It needed some structure, and I think the rye is gonna do that really nicely. All right, I'm gonna just stir this over ice. And then I am gonna garnish it with a little lemon twist. A little, I mean actually massive. I just cut a very large twist for this drink. It's aggressive. Look at this aggressive twist. All right, thought about this name too. What? So the original cocktail, of course, is the Godfather. The Godfather relating to the book and the movie. I decided as a second sibling that I would name it after Fredo Corleone, the second brother in the Corleone family. I'm gonna call this Fredo's Manhattan. I think this is a great cocktail. It's a great play on a Manhattan. Not too cloying, not too sweet, pretty balanced. You get some of that nice almondy flavor, that amaretto flavor, but it's balanced out nicely with that rye spice, that little bit of sort of raisiny cherry sweetness that we get from the vermouth, and of course the bitters, the muddled cherries. It's just like a nice rounded drink. I'm not mad at that. I gotta say, I'm genuinely surprised with how much I enjoyed mixing with the amaretto. If you're like me and you've relegated it to dessert sauces or, you know, in your coffee, try it in a different build than you're used to. So, housekeeping as usual. If you would like to follow us on Instagram or Twitter, we are Neat Boozecast. You can tweet at us, you can ask us questions, you can recommend episode ideas. If you would like to email us, we are neattheboozecast@gmail.com. Please feel free to reach out. If you would like to help support the podcast, if you would like to help finance the booze and jam, I use a lot of jam on this show, that makes the drinks for these videos, please join our Patreon. And if you haven't listened to the podcast yet, please check that out. My dad and I talk in depth about the the presence of cyanide in the breakdown of amygdalin in our systems. It got fun and sciencey and nerdy, and that was cool. So I've been Taylor Sparrow, and this has been Neat. I'm sad I don't have a menu I can put this on right now. I miss menus. I miss job. I miss things and stuff. We'll get there, everybody. Good vaccine news. Dolly Parton financed this one of the vaccines that seems to be working out for us, which I love. Dolly Parton's amazing. She just does all sorts of cool shit. Vaccine, 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 vaccine.